It's conference championship weekend for college football as the first ever 12-team playoff draws closer. But it's the action off the field in the name, image, and likeness, or NIL economy, that is raising eyebrows and some big concerns. Albert Samaha is a sports investigative reporter at the Washington Post. He's been covering this quite closely, and he joins us now. It's nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
You know, more people are talking about this now because of what happened recently with the quarterback star recruit, Bryce Underwood, supposed to go to LSU. And all of a sudden, now he's going to Michigan. And they say the billionaire Larry Ellison, who's obviously very familiar to our viewers, was involved, and Tom Brady. What are we to make of all of this? Do we know how much he's going to get paid?
We don't, and we probably never will. This is the future of college sports as it stands now. It is a place where there is money being thrown all over the place, not a lot of oversight to help us understand where that money is going, not a lot of regulations to determine how that money can move, who can pay, who it can go to. So what we have is a place where someone like Larry Ellison can give as much money as he wants to a program like Michigan to get the best recruits moving forward.
Why is there such a lack of transparency?
Part of the challenge here is that it's so new. And this is something that came swiftly after the Supreme Court decision in July 2021 that barred the NCAA from prohibiting athletes to make money. And since then, the federal government Congress has just left it in the hands of the states to determine how to regulate this. And what's happened in a lot of these states is this sort of competition to see who could have the least amount of regulation so as not to get in the way of the competitive advantages that they can have.
How easy is it to track even the sources of where the money's coming from? You know, never mind how much money we're talking about, but who's actually giving it?
Very, very difficult. And part of the reason is only half of the states in America have any sort of laws requiring college athletes to disclose anything about what they're getting. And within those states, each school has their own discretion to determine what they're going to require athletes to disclose. So we filed a bunch of public records requests at the Washington Post to try to get any sort of information. We got some. 14 schools gave us a lot of good info. Most public universities really didn't give us anything, and it's because they don't really have to according to the letter of the law.
Is that going to change?
There's no reason to believe that it will change. If anything, the only evidence we have is that it'll go in the other direction because the states where they are required to give information are worried that there is a recruiting disadvantage against the states where they don't have to give anything.
What about the NCAA? I mean, what is its current role and how does it see this? I don't necessarily want to call it a problem. That's my word, not other people's words. But how do they see this developing?
They have tried to do as much as they can to do as little as they can. And that has sort of been the root of the problem, is that they have sort of punted to the states and said, follow your state's laws. But every state has different laws. And so when the NCAA has started to pass these regulations on kind of eligibility rules, a lot of times it'll conflict with some state laws, not conflict with other state laws. So these universities sort of have to decide, do we want to follow the state laws? Do we want to follow NCAA guidelines? There are several court cases that are currently determining what exactly the NCAA can do moving forward, but all that is really up in the air, and the NCAA hasn't done much to give clarity to the schools.
What do we know about what the athletes themselves have to give up, so to speak, to the boosters and the benefactors when they take this money?
They don't have to give up much except the knowledge of where they are in the market. They don't know, a lot of these contracts don't allow them to discuss how much they're making. So they don't know what their colleagues are making. Depending on if you are a men's athlete in a high-profile sport like basketball or football, or an athlete in a lower-profile sport or a women's sport, they sort of have to give up more. Because for them to make money, they have to give up the time to sort of create content that will draw these corporations, while if you're a men's athlete in a higher revenue sport, you don't have to give up much, maybe a little bit of time for some charity work in exchange for six-figure checks.
I was going to ask you quickly about non-revenue sports and the fallout. If all the money is being made by, men's college football and men's college basketball, what is the fallout for all of these other sports?
The fallout is they are not getting the same amount of money at any degree. And sort of this fundamental question in terms of the economy of college athletics is, are we paying athletes based on the money that they bring into their schools, or are we paying athletes based on the labor that they're putting out? And that question has yet to be answered either by the NCAA or the states. And so what happens is you have one class of athletes who can only make money by putting in the time to develop social media followings that will draw these business interests to their brands, and another section of athletes that are really just getting paid to play.
Interesting reporting you've done. I appreciate you spending time with us, Albert. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
It's Albert Samaha, Washington Post investigative reporter.